Andy Farrell and this Wigan side say they've prepared for this as if they were 80 minutes away from a major final. And on the other side, well, there's Mike Catt, of course, an England international, and Adebayo is alongside him.
Have you been amateur that season because it was at the end of your season? Was you amateur there, or was it the first year of professionalism?
First year of professionalism. So
yeah, we've been about 5 years. We've been about 5 years, I think, professionally.
Yeah. And I mean, the difference that you could see, you know, you look at your Matt O'Connors, your Scotty Cornells, even your Henry Pauls yourself, you know, 20 years old, you're 6'6" and whatever, you know, and you're like that. Whoa.
I've never been 6'6". No.
Well, that day, it's just a difference, different physically. The physical, you know, Jace Robinson. I mean, we had never seen anything like that, especially with space. Him to Tigamala to Tupu, all these big guys, you know.
The thing was, obviously that was towards the start of my career, but that was before the salary cap. So we had everyone, like, you know, we had everyone playing, you know, and you look at the side. I mean, you look at the side the week after the main road game, the rugby league game, we played in the sevens, and you have a look at that side that won the Twickenham sevens. It's the first time we played in it. It was ridiculous. I mean, we won the Twickenham sevens, and we didn't know any of the rules. You know, we just threw the ball around, and I watched that a couple of weeks back. Actually, that was on TV, and it was embarrassing. I mean, the rucking and everything that went on with it, you know, was embarrassing. But they had some speed anyway.
Cheap. But it was just because the other thing I still remember when we kicked off, we had Clive Griffiths, I think, was one of our sort of a guy that came in from one of the coaches, rugby league. He spent a couple of weeks with us, and he said, all you got to do is just finish your sets.
Yeah.
Through your sets. And the first 4 or 5 times we had the ball, mate, we got to like tackle 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Turn the ball over, or you guys hit us.
And that's when I remember yourself. Obviously, you was the fly half and the ball player, etc. And you must have had that in your mind about finishing your sets. And there was only you that was coming onto the ball. You was playing like a forward at some point.
All 80 kilograms.
The line out at number 12. For London Irish, that's what it was like. I remember also the first day that I went to Saracens when I moved over to Rugby Union. Kevin Yates was there, and the first thing that he mentioned to me was the main road game, of how petrified he was. He said, "What a crazy game!" He said, "I was stood on the dead ball line, and you kicked off, and everyone's just charging at me, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm gonna die here."
We ended up, the problem is every time one of our guys carried, you'd pretty much put 3 guys into the tackle to hit him.
Yeah.
2 guys always ran at the little fella. So John Callard, Phil de Glanville, myself, I think we made 23 tackles in that game. And it was just...
That's not many in rugby league. Honestly, you used to do that in rugby league. You used to pick on someone, and it was tend to be the best player to try and tire them out. And the reason that you complete your sets is to be able to do that, to take the legs off them, you know?
Yeah.
In one game, I remember Paul Sculthorpe, he got taken off 10 minutes before the end of the game, a game at Wigan, and he made 54 tackles before he got taken off 10 minutes before the game, because they just kept running at him.
It's crazy. And it's relentless, eh?
Yeah, it is, yeah. The ball's never out of play, isn't it?
And then when we carried, I think after the first sort of 15 minutes, after Andy Robinson, Steve Ajomo used to go, getting pounded, I think we ended up, as they were about to get to contact, we just dive on the floor. I think it was illegal at the time, but just to avoid and try and generate quick ball, we were like...
20 rugby league guys that did that as well, you know, for a quick player.
Brutal, mate. They were proper roll hits.
I remember you guys, people coming out with shoulder pads when they'd never worn shoulder pads. It wasn't allowed in rugby then, was it? And everyone was coming out with massive big shoulder pads.
Oh, Jesus.
It is, but that's the thing. It's the unknown, isn't it? It's the unknown, and that's what the scary thing was for us. a couple of weeks after that. I mean, I suppose we were lucky that we had the sevens as well, so we had a little bit of a feel for Twickenham as well. The week after the main road game, the sevens was on, and then the return game was a couple of weeks after that. So so at least some of our senior players have been there. But I remember I didn't play long at all in the main road game because of the sevens and the backlog. As I was mentioning before, then it was crazy times for Wigan, really. I mean, it was the first ever Super League era, so the first ever season, and we'd arranged to play midway through the season 2 games against Bath, and a sevens competition right in the middle of that first season. I mean, it's ballsy, really, you know, from a Wigan point of view.
That was financial.
Pardon?
Do you think there was a big financial kickback on that with the television rights or anything? I can't really remember.
They were decent crowds, weren't they? Yeah, I remember.
You had 20,000 at Main Road and 42 at Twickenham.
Yeah. So there would have been that 100%, definitely.
That's probably why. Pay for your wages.
What score was it at half time at Main Road?
Oh, you were 52-0, I think.
Yeah, I remember because Graham West was our coach and he was 42, and we brought him out of retirement for the Twickenham game because he was the tallest. In our. And I mean, I was built like a flipping skinny centre, like, you know, at 20 years of age, and I was the second tallest, so I was second row in that game as well. But I remember there was only Joe Lydon had a bit of connection, really. Obviously, Scott Cornell was playing for us, but Joe Lydon knew a little bit about rugby union, and Joe had just retired, and we brought him back into the squad for the main road game. I'm not sure whether he was on the bench. You know, I'm not really good at looking back at things memory-wise about my career anyway. But I remember him coming into the dressing room at half-time, and I think we was 50 points up, and he said, "What are you doing? They're going to kill us in a couple of weeks." I said, take your foot off the gas. That's it. That's enough now. And we're all going, "Shut up, Joe." You know. That was the biggest memory of the main road one at half time, you know.
You know, we played opposite Joe in that in the Union game. So Joe played 10. I remember in that when we got to Twickenham, I think it was a second or third scrum, because you're in the second row with Westy.
Yeah.
And Graham Dorr somebody sent a little punch through. Who he's clocked, whether he's hit you or Westy or one of the other props, mate, and you've turned up and you've given the proper, the finger came out and the abuse came out.
I remember that because, I remember Graham Dawes for two reasons. One for that, but two, I've never seen a hooker, especially in rugby, wear white boots on a stage like that, you know. Yeah, he was ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time. Then he had white boots on. Yeah, hooker.
Tough nut they were, mind you.
Yeah, I know.
They were,
I remember the Twickenham game that you obviously came with a plan straight away. I believe you actually kicked for goal first up to go 3 points up. I mean, it's supposed to be an exhibition match, you know? 3 points up. And you had as many scrums as you possibly could and just drilled us. I remember we trained with Orrell the week before to try and just orientate ourselves with the game, really. And it's probably the worst thing that we ever did, because we just started thinking about rugby union the whole time. But it's in the second half where we just started throwing the ball around. We cut loose a bit. But having said that, I mean, I remember Sean Edwards saying after the game, if the game would have gone on longer, we could have won. But absolutely no chance. I mean, if you guys had just kept it tight and played, you guys came to the party as well in the second half and tried to open it up, and it did get open, and the game was quick, and etc. And there's some nice tries scored. But if you kept scrummaging us, rucking us, pick and go, and line out, yeah. I mean, it would have been as big a score as a couple of weeks previous.
It was also the referees, wasn't it? They had to let a load of things go.
Yeah.
You know, but there was some those tries that you guys scored. I think we turned over the ball literally on your try line, and it's 2 passes. Jace hit.
It went back into the in goal. It went back into the in goal, didn't it? 2 tries, full length of the field.
Back in and then they went. Tigamala back into Rilinsky, Henry Paul. It was just I think Mike Hall or Mick Cassidy scored one of them. It was just unbelievable try.
Yeah.
It's just that when you guys had the space, that's where you guys were so dangerous, mate. Your backs especially.
I remember talking to a few of your boys coming off the pitch, and it was Andy Robinson I was speaking to. He says that's the fastest game of rugby union that I've ever played in my life. At the end of the season, Catty, albeit you'd had a couple of weeks off.
At least we won it, because I tell you what, I think there were a few boys after that main road game that were going, "Oh my God, we better turn up on this one, mate. Otherwise, we're gonna." That's why we picked and went. 10 minutes just picked and went. The 4 just went straight through you guys. But no, it took us a while to score.
Well, yeah, you was down there. You had the territory with the scrummaging. I mean, the scrummaging. I mean, it just went bang in those days, didn't it? There was no set.
Yeah.
You just went bang, and I mean, rugby league. By then, they were just leaning on. It's. They would get rid of the scrum if it weren't for a restart of a game, in rugby league. But when I think about that game, I don't really think too much, because obviously I was playing rugby league the whole time. That much about the main road game. Martin Afaya keeps reminding me that he scored 6 tries or whatever, so that always comes up, and that's why I'm always reminded of it. But I always remember the Twickenham game, because, I mean, if you think about it, Henry Paul, Gary Connolly, Martin Afaya, Scott Quinnell, Jason Robertson, myself, Sean Edwards, all ended up in Union, and that was my first feel of it, glimpse it. Obviously, I watched it, but it was my first game, and I actually think it's the first time that I ever captained Wigan, actually. Because Sean Edwards didn't play, and I think I took over the captaincy after that. So it was a big thing for me, because after that, I certainly appreciated the game more. Wanted to understand the game, because obviously I felt the pressure from the breakdowns and the rucking and the offside, not being back 10 metres, etc. I felt all that, but just the dynamics of how the game worked from set piece and. So from set piece, line out and scrum, I was intrigued by from that day on, So it was a big thing for me.
Well, did you find it was just a lot more? I mean, looking at that Union game again, it was just so much slower, wasn't it? It was very much a stop-start thing compared to the main road. It's a almost completely different mentality in terms of.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I remember at the start of the game. We would have certainly been nervous going into a game that we knew not many of the rules, So you'd be nervous anyway, playing at Twickenham, etc. But I remember the first 20 minutes for us as a team that was pretty skillful side. I remember people dropping the ball the whole time because the pressure was different, because the game line was on the game line, It was right up in front. We're used to going forward and having five meters to get going, So I remember the ball being spilled quite a bit. Hence, you got exactly what you wanted regarding scrummaging.
Very true.
Brutal.
I also think you go back into it, you look at the competitiveness in the individuals, even in that league game. There's a few quotes from Sean Edwards and stuff, and he said, although you guys came off the boil a little bit in that second half, we finally got through to completing our sets and all that sort of stuff. And I think we held you to 25 points rather than 50.
Did you score? Did you score again?
No, John Kellard scored. So he scored 8 try. And that's all the commentators, Stuart Barnes and Steve-O, were going on about can they score? Can they? And yeah, John Callot scored and converted.
Mike, you had an attempted drop goal, I think, as well, didn't you?
Did I go for one? Did I?
Yeah.
What, when they were 70 points down?
It was first minute. But just look at the mentality of the guys. You know, there was no letting up from you guys. You know, every hit you guys hit, it was fierce. You know, every time you carried.
Yeah.
You know, it was amazing. There was no sort of backward step given in anything that we did. It was crazy. Same in the Union game.
Look, it's because if you look at the side, you know, competition for places was huge, and it really didn't matter whether you was playing a rugby union side or playing a game of rugby union. You were still representing Wigan, you know, and there was always somebody waiting to take your place. So,
Yeah.
Always. So competition for places was huge, and you know that bred into how we trained, etc. And you couldn't have expected anything less of yourself than giving your all week in, week out. That's how it was. That's certainly how it was back then, you know. I mean, I remember in the rugby league game, you know, it's one of those. If you get up to 60 and you haven't scored, you're going, I need to score. So people were hungry, weren't they? Like, you know,
Yeah.
hungry to score tries. But I mean, I'm a Man City supporter as well, you know. So to play at Main Road, it was class. Yeah. I actually, you know, you said about Guscott not playing. I'd be gutted, like, you know, if I'd have just sat out and not been involved. To feel how the occasion and how it felt to play a different sport, it's a privilege, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, 100%. I think Guscott and then Sean Edwards said he was injured or something. I think he sat out the Union game. He didn't play the Union game.
He didn't play the Union game, you know. Hence why I captained.
You've just become Great Britain captain, though, hadn't you?
I was named Wigan captain
That day.
at the end of that season, and then Great Britain captain that
Right.
at the end of the 21, I think. I was 20 then. Yeah.
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 Just the characters in those teams were brilliant, man.
I know.
I remember we went to sports. What was the big sports awards at the end of the year? And we bumped into all the Wigan lads. I mean, proper crazy.
It is good, isn't it, to get to know people from a different sport, like, you know? Because there would have been a rivalry back then, you know? And it certainly helped bring the clubs closer together. You know, there certainly was a mutual respect, 100% on the back of it.
But also realizing that it's two completely different games.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was a big thing for me, was actually realizing, wow, it's not not the same at all. It's completely
same shape pitch, a few different markings, but the rules are completely different, aren't they? One's very simple, which is like a war of attrition, you know, keep the ball on the field, etc. And one's very technical, you know. From a rugby league background back then, you know, you would see a ruck or a maul as just like a heap of a mess, you know. You want to understand what goes into it technically to make it happen. And I think, and that's the beauty of rugby for me. That is, when you see the traditional parts of it, the dark arts of it, it's when it's done properly, it's like a really well-oiled machine, you know. And when you understand it, then you appreciate it massively, didn't you?
Well, again, it's to go back to those breakdowns. It's like you guys kept on flipping us on our backs every time we tackle in the league game. You'd flip us on our backs, and we couldn't understand why are you flipping us on our backs.
Yeah. So
then you realise that you've got to get back 10 to come forward again. So by flipping us on the back, turtling us, we just couldn't stop from being turtled.
I know.
Onto it, and you try to get, and you were this crazy salmon flapping around on the floor trying to get up. We couldn't understand why, but now having played it, you were like, wow.
And then you try and flip somebody on the back in the Union game, and then you'd end up on the wrong side, and somebody would shoo you out the way, you know, because you could still do that back in the day. That was a surprise as well.
Yeah. What been brilliant times.
Andy, you mentioned captaining Wigan at Twickenham. What was that like?
It was awesome. I actually don't know whether it was the first time I captained Wigan or not. I suppose Sean would have been injured sometime in that season anyway, whether I had another opportunity. But Graham West was the coach back then, and I think he was only the coach for about a year and a half or something like that. And there was 5 trophies to go for, and we'd won all 5. And I'd been brought up with him in the Wigan second team as a kid, as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. And so I played with him. He was still playing, and he was absolutely awesome for everyone coming through at Wigan, because he was the elder statesman that had captained New Zealand, captained Wigan for years and years and years. And he was the second team coach. But the reason he was the second team coach is because he was still playing. And he was like getting into his 40s, and his job was just to look after the kids. So he helped me come through. I captained the second team for him on quite a few occasions. And so I suppose it was just a natural progression, because he was the coach that I took over from there, But I mean, it's a big old occasion when you go into a famous ground, captaining your team, and obviously with it being a big honour. But at the same time, going to a game that you knew nothing about, really. That was pretty daunting, really. I mean, I can't remember the team talk, but I'm sure there weren't much tactics in it.
And it was kind of the first time that both of your respective careers kind of intertwined, because as we know, as the years went on, you shared a dressing room together, and you're now sharing a coaching booth together. But that was kind of the first time you'd come across each other on a pitch.
Yeah, well, it was, yeah. Obviously, I watched Andy coming through the ranks, really, in terms of the league, and Great Britain. He played for Great Britain a lot of the time. We were very interested. There were 4 or 5 of us that were very interested in league, and you always had a thought in the back of your mind, I'd love to give it a go one day. I'd love to give it a go. And then fortunately it went, Union went professional. So the money was half decent, and you didn't get your head kicked in. But yeah, no, I mean, that Wigan team was phenomenal, going all the way through, and what it achieved. And then obviously Faz going up through the ranks and what he achieved, and then switching over to Union, coming to Saracens. And he had a bit of a stop-start when he turned up in Union with his, with your back and all that sort of stuff. Never played at all. And then we got into the 07 World Cup together, really. So we
were both hanging on in by then, weren't we, Catt?
We were surviving.
Trying to survive.
We played the same position, but it didn't feel like it, did it?
It definitely didn't. There wasn't a position for me.
We were in 07 World Cup and had a blast there. Obviously got to a final. And then work with England, 2013 again, and then now Baz has very kindly got me on board again now. So it's been crazy, really.
Yeah, and I know you say you don't particularly look back, or probably have time to look back just with your coaching career, but was it nice, I suppose, to kind of go back down memory lane, and even this conversation here, just to reminisce about those days, which were obviously a great time in your career?
Yeah, it is good. I've because of the lack of sport on TV, or live sport on TV, somebody's always texting you saying, "Oh, that game's on, mate. That game's on from back then." And I don't know why. I've always been one that's just gone on to the next game, or never really looked back on the season or achievements or whatever. I'm not really that interested, to be honest. But what has been good watching these games back is I'm watching them again almost for the first time, you know what I mean? So I'm enjoying them like it's live. So I mean, I couldn't remember some of the stuff that went on in the second game, the rugby union game. But I was just saying to Mike earlier then that if we was coaching the Bath side, we'd be pulling our hair out, Certainly if I was coaching the Wigan side, watching the Rugby League game, that wasn't too great neither, you know what I mean? The standards have risen so much, as you would expect them to anyway. I think it's it's always interesting looking back. You know, I look back at some of the rugby league or rugby union games from the 80s. I mean, they were brutal. But some of the stuff that they were doing was like just mindless stuff. Like, you know, there was no organisation, no defensive structure or attacking structure or whatever. You know, so the games have gone on and kicked on massively, both of them. You know, and rightly so, really.
I also think looking back at things, and in this time when we're in lockdown, is, you know, Faz has got Gabe, I've got Ellis. They're both 8, 9 years old. And obviously they weren't around. Our older kids were, but they weren't around at that sort of time. So it's actually quite nice to sit down with your little fella and you sort of watching the game and they're going, is that you? Is that Gabe's dad? Is that Andy? Is that, you know, it's actually quite interesting. It's quite nice to sort of reminisce a little bit with them as well. Yeah,
it is true that, you know, because like with Owen, he would have seen all that, and that would have been great for him, you know, to see a career. But for Gabriel, I'd be teaching him something on the beach or throwing a ball around in the back garden, and then obviously he'd watch you do it on TV and go, oh, so you could actually do it yourself, could you? You know what I mean? I don't think he actually believed me at the time when I was trying to teach him.
Yeah. Mike, you mentioned as well just that how stacked both teams were in terms of the names. Like looking down the team sheet, there's so many internationals on the Wigan team, players like Jason Robinson, Andy, Martin Offiah, Scott Quinnell, Henry Paul. Like it was a stacked card, I suppose, in those two games. And at the time, it was a heavyweight clash.
Yeah, for me, I mean, that Wigan team was international then. You know, Henry Paul, Twickenham, these guys, you know, Tatupu. You know, Scotty Quinnell came up from Union as well. So I mean, they had round the world brilliance. You know, not just sort of homegrown stuff. Where Bath was very much a sort of a homegrown. You came up through the ranks, in the amateur days, and you committed everything to it. So yeah,
all the way from South Africa, wasn't you, Catty?
Very English fans, very English. Amateur. But yeah, no. So we had just come out off the back of a World Cup, obviously, where Jonah ran over the top of me. So we got to a semi-final of a World Cup, and a lot of the players.
Remember that?
Nobody can, thankfully. Yeah. It's not played enough on telly, I don't think. But then Phil de Glanville had just become England captain as well. He had just taken over from Will Carling. So John Callard was very much in the frame of it. So Victor Ubugu, Graham Daw, all these guys had you know, I think we had pretty much full team was full of international, which was very impressive.
Yeah. What's the to finish off, maybe what's the kind of the abiding memory from that period, Andy? You know, it was such a successful period for yourself and Wigan. Looking back now, is there any kind of standout memories? You mentioned playing there at Main Road as a Man City fan was nice, but anything that kind of sticks out?
I suppose the thing that sticks out for me, I mean, I didn't know at the time, is the connections that you've made because of that. Like I mentioned before, the amount of players that went to rugby union, 100% would have been influenced by those occasions, you know. Myself, playing at Twickenham for the first time was obviously an honour. But when you look back at the things, it's uncanny, really. Like me and Catty, our careers have crossed tremendously over the last 12 years. Like, you know, it's been super. I mean, the other thing would be Andy Robinson. He got man of the match in the Twickenham game. He's the guy who was the England coach who signed me into rugby union. You know, so the connections are absolutely huge from a couple of occasions like that. You know. And whether they're consciously or subconsciously had because we've played against each other, I think they probably was. Yeah. I think they probably was at the forefront of people's minds because of the respect that we had for each other because of the games. You know, that would be my biggest take on the whole thing.
Yeah. And for you, Mike, something similar?
I think I mean, other than the connections that you made along the way, of the actual 2 games, was the difference between professionalism and amateurism was we're gulfs apart. And for us to get to a certain level, to even compete physically with a team like a Wigan, just physically, was going to take a few years to get to, well, quite a lot of years to get to actually be able to match teams like that physically. And I think this is where New Zealand, especially in Union, were so much further ahead than everybody else. And South Africa, really, because they had these big men, genetically big guys, and they really dominated. So, and I think that's why England has done relatively well coming through now, is the profession. They understood what it takes to be professional and to get to that level to compete with the likes of New Zealand, South Africa. So that was probably one of the biggest things. But also, the whole cross codes thing for me was pretty special. The fear, I've never felt fear like that before that first game. I didn't think I could, to be honest. You play the game, your adrenaline got pumped, but it was a hell of a takeaway from that first game. And it was brilliant. We came out of it unscathed and really loved it. Part of history.
Here we are, reminiscing, talking about the story. Catt thought he was going to die before the Mayoral game.
I wasn't the only one.
I know he wasn't, mate. I tell you, you showed up unbelievably well. I mean, you was doing some of the forwards work, weren't you?
Thanks, boss.
Taking the ball in.
There we go.
You scored as well, Catt, in the Twickenham one, didn't you?
Yeah. Beat about 10 defenders, chipped over the top, pulled the ball around the corner, boom, dived in the corner. Yeah. No, just a little easy 10 meter down the right hand side. I think it was when you guys were tiring.